Welcome to Declares Delight for Life. It's about life, where we share our experience, strength, and hope to help others so they have a better understanding. Thank you.
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Hi. I'd love to see your picture. Welcome to Declares Delight for Life. It's about life, sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I'd like to welcome you aboard. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Go for it.
Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Vivian McKinnon and I am based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Originally from Scotland, from a small village called Roslin, just outside Edinburgh. So thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you on my podcast. What I usually like to do with folks, I kind of start from their childhood and kind of work up. If you don't mind, I'm actually 55. If you don't mind me asking your age, is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I'm in a couple of months.
If you don't mind me asking how old you are.
Yeah, so I'll be 50 in a couple of months.
I'm both in the same age bracket, so that's great.
Yeah.
If you would, for the audience, start with your childhood, maybe things you went through as a child with your family and, work your way up to where you are now. I know that's half a century, but go for it.
I had to find a room in the house, Andrea, that I have a better reception on.
Okay, this is great. I can hear you great. So I like your background. Happy.
Thank you.
I have a placard that says live, love, and laugh. So
yeah. This is some wallpaper at the back. I'm actually sitting on my bed. It's the best place to get a reception at this time. I don't know what's happening here.
You can see my background. I love stuffed animals and I love animals. So
yeah. How did you find me, Andrea? How did you come across me?
On LinkedIn, and I had some people who work with me from the Philippines. I have people who work. I let me say I'm international. I have people from all over the world come into my podcast. So
fantastic.
I love different cultures. I'm Christian myself, but I think it's good for people to experience different cultures, different viewpoints and things.
Absolutely.
But the one thing I know is basic needs. We all need love, kindness, compassion, certainty, safety, but and freedom, and being able to speak up and not be afraid of people. I don't worry about people's opinions of me, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to deal with all this. Let me say I deal with strange things when you're doing social media. So if you can understand my point.
Absolutely. And the thing with opinions, Andrea, is everybody has them and none two people have the same. So opinions are subjective to the very person who has them. So nobody's ever right, nobody's ever wrong. It's all your perception. And, I'm pretty much the same myself. I take, everybody's entitled to their opinion, everybody's entitled to their perception, but it certainly doesn't rule my life or control any aspect of my existence.
I agree. So would you start with your childhood and kind of work your way up on challenges you overcome?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Scotland in the 1970s, and my mum was alcohol dependent. She wasn't that bad when I was first born. She had quite a rough childhood herself. She had aspirations to become a psychiatric nurse, and she suffered a couple of miscarriages early on in her marriage to my dad, and that really set her back mentally. She then had my sister. She then had another couple of miscarriages. She then had a wee baby boy who died when he was 6 weeks old, and she then had me. So by the time I came along, Andrea, there was quite a lot of hurt, there was quite a lot of sadness, there was quite a lot of disconnection within the relationship between my dad and my mum. So I was kind of brought into the world, and I was supposed to be a wee boy. So the first things I heard was, oh, it's a little girl. I wanted a little boy. So even just hearing that is the very first things, to be born to. And then when I was about 8 months old, I fell face first down a flight of concrete stairs in a baby walker. And that kind of set the tone for quite a traumatic childhood. And I think on the back of that, my mum had lots of different beliefs about, what kind of mother would let that happen? How could I have had that happen to my daughter? So I think it just compounded into her sense of hopelessness, of helplessness, of not being good enough. And by the time I was about age 8, I used to wet myself when my mum came near to me if she raised her voice. And so there was lots of different things that were going on. By age 8, I'd experienced pretty much every abuse you could imagine. And that was, not directly at the hands of my mum, but just through being left in vulnerable situations when she was drunk. And then I was introduced to alcohol myself when I was 8. And it just was an opportunity to just be. I had this warm, fuzzy glow. It gave me this connection to myself that up until then I hadn't really experienced. And I suppose it was the start of a solution. And, as with any addictions or any substance use, it's not the substance itself that's the problem. And that's the solution to your problem. So
Jack, just to hear, I'm a compulsive overeater, compulsive shopper, hoarder, and I was 494 pounds 15 years ago.
Wow.
So I understand addictions very well, and I go to a 12-step program and a program at my church. So yeah, I kind of get you a little bit. I just want to give you a little bit of me, to let you understand that I do know where, believe me, I have a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, and I can understand from that point of view on addictions that it's not easy to deal with.
So, no, that's it. And addiction is, addiction of anything is just, it's a way to avoid the pain. We do one of two things in life. We move towards pleasure or we move away from pain. And for me, alcohol allowed me to move away from pain. And when I was 13, I was introduced to cannabis, and it was just another way to move away from the pain. I was in and out of school, and I left home when I was really young, and I got married when I was 18, had my son when I was 18, and I got married to a man who, to me, seemed like this big warrior. People were afraid of him, and I suppose for me, I kind of thought this man's going to look after me, but as it worked out, after a couple of years, he wasn't the person who I thought he was, and I ended up homeless, and I lived on the streets for a couple of nights. I was in and out of homelessness accommodation, bed and breakfasts and things like that over the space of about 6 months. And when I was there, I was introduced to harder drugs. I was introduced to cocaine and amphetamine. And it was around about the 90s, and there was a huge movement in the dance world. And I got involved in the dance scene, and I was a dancer in a cage, and I kind of lost myself in that like hedonistic, I suppose, lifestyle. But constantly had this voice in my head who was telling me that I was no good, that other people were better than me, that I was unlovable, that I deserved everything that I was getting, that, no wonder I was a terrible parent, because, it was just incessant. When I was about 29, I collapsed one day. I went from being slightly unwell to being completely unconscious in the space of about 6 hours. And they thought it was suspected meningitis. So I got rushed into the hospital in the ambulance. And when I got there, they put me straight into intensive care. And 2 days later, I started to awaken again. And before I even opened my eyes, the voice was there again. Oh, look at what you've done now. No wonder nobody loves you. Look at the state of you. You're a mess. You don't deserve to have children. And it was just incessant, But for the first time ever, really, there was another voice that was there that was just saying, please stop this. Please stop this. You have two choices now. You live or you die. And anybody who's gone through change, and you yourself, it's not just as simple as you say one day, that's it, I'm going to change. And the next again day, it's like unicorns and glitter on the pathway to success. It just doesn't happen like that.
What you see here has been 54 years in the making. So it's not until this last year that I come into this business and, really making my life change. I was in a battering relationship for years, and I get the point, and not feeling good enough and feeling like you're worthless. But I found that God can heal anything, and that's just my belief. And He's healed me of a lot and dealt with a lot. And I only let positive people into my life. And I
Yeah.
let go of a lot of folks. So sorry for the interjection, but
No, not at all. Not at all.
I want you to
Um,
help that I do understand.
yeah. So when I left that bed that day in the hospital, well, it was the next again day. When I left, I kind of was going, I really want to change, but I don't know what to do. And all my friends were people who were highly traumatized, people who were kind of living the same lifestyle as me. They were, living for the weekend. All my good friends were prostitutes, drug dealers, gangsters sort of types. And I was kind of going, like, how do I change this? What do I do? And is it even possible? I see other people living their lives and I think everybody has a mask, everybody has a screen. Does everybody feel as lonely and as empty and as vulnerable as I do? And I always kind of moved away from vulnerability because for me, it wasn't a safe place to be. So I started to change. I started to, look at different things. This was sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And I'd got interested. I had read an article on neurolinguistic programming, and some of it kind of made sense and it resonated a bit with me. And then in 2001, I had been working part-time. And when I was there, when I first started working, and it was my first job, not my first job, but my first job in a long time that was a proper wage. So when I first started working there, I said, I'm going to give some money every month to a charity. And so I donated some of my wages every month to a charity which helped young people whose lives had been impacted by mental health and addiction. And I felt like I wanted to give something back. So through them, they gave me an opportunity to go out to China, to walk 100 miles of the Great Wall. And I sat in the bar one night with an ex-boyfriend and I told him, and he shook his head and he said, "You will never do that. Like, who's going to, what do you want to drink?" I went up to the bar, and Andrea, I remember looking at him and looking at the back of his head and thinking, I will prove you wrong. I will do this and I will prove you wrong. And I went and I was to raise £2,500. I raised £2,600 in cash. I got an £18,000 grant and a £22,000 grant. So I raised 42,600 and I went off to China. And I was living with panic disorder at that time. And I just challenged every belief. I started looking at words, and the word believe, the three letters in the middle is LIE. And I just started to question, what if everything I believe has a lie at the core of it? What if everything I believe about myself, other people, and the world, from the story that I've been fed from my mum, from my granny, from my great-granny, that's been passed down through these generations, what about if what I believe is actually a lie? And let's see if I can find a lie. And then I realised that what I believe creates my beliefs. And in the middle of the word belief is LIE, which is a lie. So it was a real kind of time for me that I was starting to dissect words and really look at how I was communicating with myself and other people. And so I went out to China with 52 people I'd never met before in my life. I'd met them once at a meeting before we went. And every morning I got up half an hour early before everybody else. And I sat in front of the mirror and I said, "Panic, if you're coming, you come now, because I don't have time for this today." So I sat, and a couple of mornings I did have a panic attack because the enormity of what I had done and where I was really kind of kicked in. But there was a few days that it was about 4:00 in the afternoon and I was sitting with people and I could feel my stomach going and I could feel my heart starting to race. But that softer, kinder voice that had spoken to me within my own head that day in the hospital was kind of going, no, wait a minute, Panic. She gave you an opportunity this morning and you never took it. So you leave her alone. And it was just an amazing 2 weeks. It was an amazing fortnight in China. And I came back with jet lag and I fell asleep for a day and a half. And I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I just had the most amazing dream. And then I turned around and see my suitcase and stuff there. And I was like, oh, I actually did that. And again, that really got me to where I was like, oh my goodness, if I can do that and I can challenge that, what else can I challenge? What else? What are the other things that are running my life that have no need to be there? So this was 2001. In 2003, I started to volunteer for a charity. And I'd been working part-time, as I say. I was a cleaner in a laboratory, and I was part of the team that cloned Dolly the sheep. And I had left there, and I was volunteering for young people, and I was doing all these different things. And by this point, my son was 13, and he was starting to really, I'd caught him with a bag of grass, and he was just starting to be really disconnected. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm handing this generational bag of trauma. I'm passing it on. I've passed it on to my son unwillingly. My gran passed it on to my mum passed it on to me, I've passed it on to my son. And so I thought, right, I'm going to start working. So I started working with young people in the care system, and going to that job, going to that volunteering position. The girl who ran the project, within a couple of months, she said, Viv, you should be doing, this is the type of work you should be doing. You're amazing with the young people. You've got such a connection. You've got such an infinity. And I think it was one of the first times that I started to actually feel like I belonged somewhere. I wasn't fitting in. I wasn't creating versions of myself to get other people to like me, to keep me as part of their friendship group. I actually felt like I belonged. I felt like I was serving. My life actually had a purpose. So within 6 months, they made me the head of the programme, which was absolutely amazing. And it was one of the first times I actually seen myself through someone else's eyes. And they said I could do it. So I thought, right, I can do it. I can do it. I've just having that little bit of belief. And sometimes that's what it is. It's just having that little bit of spark that somebody else sees in you, and then they see it in you. And it almost like gives you that confidence to be like, wow, somebody actually sees me, sees the real me. So that was in 2000. And then 2004, through that volunteering position, I was asked if I would like to go for a float. And I was kind of going, what's a float? So I went into a float tank for the first time, which is 25 centimetres of body temperature water and half a tonne of Epsom salt. And you just float on top of the water. You don't make connection with the world anywhere. You don't see, hear, feel, smell, taste anything. You don't need balance. You don't need movement. You simply be. And again, it just allowed me to have that space to reflect, to recharge, and to completely reset who I thought I was. And I remembered being about 4 years old, and I was running away from something. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a person or it was an experience, but I remember lying in the long grass. And as I lay in the long grass, I remember almost like feeling myself coming out of myself, looking down on myself, and then just disappearing. And when I went into that float tank, it was almost like that part of me that left me when I was 4 years old, that part of me that just said, this is whatever it is that's going on, this is too traumatic. It was like it came back to me in that float tank, and it almost shook me and woke me up. And it was like, you've got work to do. There are people out there that need you. So I then set about, I'm going to bring flotation to people who are traumatized. I'm going to bring flotation to people who've had adverse childhood experiences. I'm going to bring flotation to people who have addictions. And then the voice was going, how are you going to do that? You left school when you were 15. You have no qualifications. Who's going to listen to you? You're not. And again, the other voice was saying, well, go back to school. Go back and you can do it. You're not too old. So I went to college. I studied health and social care. And I looked at what are under the underpinning values and models that hold up our health and social care system. And from there, I went to university and I looked at social sciences. And I looked more importantly at group dynamics and group think, and how can we change our views and the way we think about things simply by surrounding ourselves with people who think in the same way. And I got really interested in echo chambers and how, to live in a society that is truly equitable and diverse, we need all different types of people. You can't constantly surround yourself with the same type of people as you, because then you just reaffirm the things that you think and you never get challenged cognitively. You never get a chance.
One thing? The only thing is that it's like biodiversity. Yes. If you don't have biodiversity in nature, it dies. Everything you have to have a lot of different birds, animals. Otherwise, if you just have one thing, it dies off. And the same thing goes for society. We can all have similar beliefs, but each of us is different. And it's that biodiversity that keeps things moving forward. And I just thought I'd interject something that maybe our audience would understand about biodiversity.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it just for me. So I went to university, then moved over to Northern Ireland in 2010, because the one thing that hadn't really changed through all this, I had changed massively. There was lots of different things that were happening, but the environment that I was living in was exactly the same. So I still had people who would think nothing of coming to my house at 2 o'clock in the morning because they fell out with their husband, and they knew my house was a place of safety. They knew the kettle was on, they knew there was food in the fridge, they knew there was a bed for them to put their head down. And I just thought, I'm never going to get away with this. And people would turn up with, I've got a bag of grass, or I've got a carry out, and it was just like, even although I had stopped and I wasn't doing anything, I still knew that I was kind of seen as the auntie to the village, and people knew that they could come and they would be welcomed with open arms. So I moved to Northern Ireland in 2010, and I started to work for a company called Assert, and I was looking at strategic planning for communities. So looking at taking in training for young people who were maybe getting drunk in the park. I was taking in, putting in training for the elderly who maybe had scheduled medication, and there was an issue with maybe Valium or something in that housing estate. And it was, educating elderly people about the importance of locking away their medications and stuff. But there was a part of me that was kind of going, I've took a step too far up now, because I was so disconnected from the people that I really wanted to be supporting and helping. So while it was good and it was a good experience, I'm not strategic. Well, I am strategic, but it's not where my heart lies. My passion lies in operational, working with people face to face. So I've done that. And then I got an opportunity to move over to another company called FASA. And when I moved over to them, I was still going backwards and forwards to Scotland, and I was floating every time I was going back to Scotland. And I kept saying, you think somebody would open a float centre? Why has nobody opened a float centre before? Everybody would use a float centre. You'd think. So I was kind of realised that when you're talking about somebody, everybody, nobody and anybody, generally the finger's pointing at you, because you're the one with the idea. You're the one that's asking the questions about it. So I, in 2000 and, when I first moved over here in 2010, and then I was going backwards and forwards to float, I then studied neurolinguistic programming, and I then went on and done a master's in neurolinguistic programming and timeline therapy and hypnosis. And I studied with Dr. Richard Bandler, who was one of the co-creators of NLP. I then went on and done a diploma in clinical hypnotherapy. I'd done a certificate in cognitive behavioural therapy. I studied with a couple of doctors from New York in the havening technique. I done lots of different things. And in 2015, after packing in my full-time job, spending my husband's life savings, I then put myself £66,000 in debt and opened Hydroease, which is Northern Ireland's only dedicated flotation centre. And now I support people who have been impacted by trauma, people who feel that they are lost in a world that just isn't made for them, that feel that the modern, fast, frenetic culture that we live in is just causing so many issues for people. And I offer them something different, offer them something that is not a clinical setting, offer them something that's not a traditional approach, but it's kind of guided by that person. It's guided by what they think works for them. And when I'm working with people, I always go with what they bring into the room at that time, because things can change so quickly for people. So a big birthday this year, 50 in a couple of months. And I feel for the last maybe 5 years, I kind of think I'm rocking life a wee bit now. I think I've found my groove. I've found my flow.
I understand that. After this business almost died 8 months ago, I got the business going. I'm into writing my fourth book, and I'm on the different social platforms, and I'm getting the word out there. In fact, I was just nominated to be an author in a magazine of 79,000 empowering women.
Wow. Well
Um,
done.
yes, yes, yes. It starts in 2022, and I'll write an article every month.
Fantastic.
It was called "Soar on the Wings of Eagles." My article I wrote for him, and a lot of it's just hard work. Creating your own luck. You know what I'm talking about, and I can see
Absolutely.
because I believe there is no free lunch. As far
No.
as I am retired, I'm a retired corrections officer. Been through a lot of trials and tribulations, traumatized as a child with severe mental, physical, and sexual abuse for many years till age 11. And yeah, I do get it. And I ended up eating and being big all my life until just 15 years ago, until I decided, you know what, I'd had enough. And I
Yep.
go to a 12-step program. And even here recently, I've had enough of family telling me what to do or arguing. You know, I've decided if people want to argue, it takes two to argue. And
Absolutely.
and I've dealt with enough trauma in my life to last me a lifetime. And believe me, I'll be very honest. I deal with a bipolar disorder, PTSD, anxiety disorder, and at one time, because of all the severe trauma, you've probably heard of multiple personality disorder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I dealt with that and spent 4 years in therapy dealing with that. And I am now one person, which is quite awesome for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just, applaud you, for what you've been able to do, because having come from that
Thank
background
you.
and realizing that it's not an easy situation. In fact, I was raised in a cult till age 11 when I was taken out of the home and raised in a Christian family. And, you know, and I went into a period of darkness. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, let me say I had several suicide attempts, several hospitalizations, I lost count. And then finally, about 8 years ago, I decided enough was enough and kind of climbed out of that hole. And this last year has been really awesome. I feel like you, calling out the shots.
Yeah.
We all have to be able to call out the shots. But one thing I've learned is it sounds like you've let your gut be your guide. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Do you know, I think throughout my life, depending, as I said earlier, depending on who you were would depend on who I was. And I would be led by my head, then my heart, then my gut, then my head, then my heart, then my gut, then my head. And I was led by these three different ways until I just went, do you know what? This is like a super fast highway. If I can get the messages to go from the head to the heart to the gut, back to the head, and have the three of the things in unison, then I create a balanced version of me. I create what I call now my CEO. So I sat down and I wrote out, the various different versions of me. And I visualized sitting in a big boardroom, and I visualized the very best version of me, the total excellent version of me in a business suit, sitting at the top of the table with my nice smelly oils on and everything kind of really nice around me. And there was like birds in the room and all sorts of things like that. And I gently invited every version of me that has ever played a role in my life and brought them into the room and visualized apologizing to them and saying, I'm so sorry, I never seen your strengths back then. Thank you so much for everything you've done. What can we now do for you? So it just means that that when I have something happens, if I feel like I'm being triggered by something, I feel like I'm going to cry, or I feel like I'm going to shout, or I feel like I'm just going to respond in a way that's less than helpful to me, I actually stop and I think, now, is this me, the 49-year-old woman who is responding to this situation? Or is this me, the 5-year-old child that's reacting? Or is this me, the 20-year-old single parent who's reacting? And I just become a lot more responsive to who I am as a whole person, using the head, the heart, and the gut. Because how many times does our gut speak and we kind of just ignore it and we'll say, I knew that, I could feel it in my stomach, but I've done nothing about it. Or you go into something and your heart's totally in it, but your head's like, don't think you should be doing this. It's amazing how much intuition we get and how much intelligence we get from inside ourselves, that it just takes us so long to trust it and believe it, and so long to embrace that vulnerability and to step out of the silence and kind of just show up in life and just go, do you know, this is me. Like, if you don't like it, just move along. There's plenty of people who do. You find your people in life.
I find there's a couple of years ago, do not make war with yourself. It only causes negativity on the inside that shows on the outside. Of love,
That's it.
kindness, and compassion for yourself and others, and that will move you forward. And
Yeah.
I live with that every day. And the internal struggles you talk about, I do get it. I still deal with them, and you probably still deal with them from time to time. But it's all part of the journey of life. And
So,
life is a journey. I think it's awesome. Tell me a little bit about your business a little more, and how you've been able to maintain that, or been overcome any obstacles in your business, and now with COVID going on, how's that been going considering all those factors?
yeah. So so my business is Hydro Ease, and it's a flotation centre in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And we have the highest rate in the world for trauma over here because of the civil unrest for 30 years. And I have developed a programme called RAFT, which is reconnection and flotation therapy. So it's spending an hour with someone and just getting people to connect to the true and authentic them, to the person that they are. I think trauma happens when we spend our time shying away from the shame that we have and that we carry inside us. Not to be confused with guilt. Guilt is, I have done something wrong. Shame is, I am a bad person. And there's a huge difference in that. And I think I think for years, I kind of looked at the things that had happened in my life, and I thought they were kind of like battle scars, where now I actually realise they're badges of honour. So I get other people, I work with other people. I don't do anything to them. I don't do anything for them. Everything I do, I work with them to get them to identify their badges of honour and to look at the fact that every single experience that we have in life, the people that I work with have survived. Some people that I've went to work with haven't made it. They've died by suicide beforehand, or reckless behaviours taken them. So I get people to a point where get them to realise that the magic is within them, that they have the power within them to do, be, have whatever they want. It's just finding the internal resources and finding the skills and the tools in the life that they already have to create the life they desire. So when COVID hit, we, for the first 3 months, like everywhere, we closed. But then I was kind of going, I'm holding people who are in suicidal distress. Sometimes I'm the only person some of my clients see from 1 week to the next. And especially when they're first just starting to come in and work with me. And I never do any more than about 6 sessions with people. So I really like to keep them consistent. So during COVID, when we received some funding from the Department for Health and from the executive, from the government here in Northern Ireland. And I was kind of I was saying to the council, the environmental health officers had told us that we had to close because as far as they were the ones that were sort of in control of this thing, and they were saying that they didn't see why we should be open. So I was kind of going back and saying, well, look, I would challenge that. And here are the reasons why. I went through, the research that's coming from the States, from the Laurie Institute of Brain Research in Oklahoma, about the effectiveness of using flotation therapy, how it decreases activity within the amygdala, the part of the brain that houses the fight or flight, how impactful it is for people who are living with anxiety, how beneficial it is for people who are struggling day to day, just with a fast pace, convenience technology that we have in our modern lives. And they kept saying, well, our group, our focus group or whatever we've took it to the group and they've decided. And I was kind of saying, well, I totally appreciate that, but who are you taking advice from? And, are you working on the assumption of knowledge, or are you working on actual facts? And have you taken advice from any expert, knowing that they hadn't? I am the flotation expert in Northern Ireland. I'm the only person who owns a float centre. I own the first float centre that was opened in the whole island of Ireland. So I'm the person that if anybody was coming and nobody came to me. So I looked at, my husband calls it stubbornness. I call it tenacity, because I think tenacity sounds so much better than stubbornness. So I'm tenacious.
I'm very, in fact, I received an alligator for one time being so tenacious. So I bite into something and I don't let go till I get it done.
Yeah. So and everybody was saying, oh, do you know, it's a great fight you're putting up. And I said, it's not a fight. I'm just finding opportunities to grow, because every single barrier I came up against, there was a learning in there for me. Now, that learning could have been like, I learned about SIC codes, which is a standard industry classification code. That is how your business is classified. So when it came to closing people down for COVID, this was a very important thing. I knew nothing about that, Andrea. I do now. I knew nothing about the structures and the ladders of power within local government. I do now. I never knew before that. I had never contacted the government. I'd never contacted like Arlene Foster or Michelle O'Neill, you know, the people who run our country. I know how to do that now. So I think sometimes we get stuck on the challenge and we see it as a challenge. We see it as a fight. We see it as a struggle. And I think now through forgiveness of myself and gratitude of the experiences that I have had in my life, I now find that every single situation I find myself in, I'm looking for the opportunity. I'm looking for the opportunity to grow. I'm looking for the opportunity to be grateful for the lesson I'm being taught. And I'm always looking to forgive myself for getting it wrong. Because you know what? We get it wrong. Sometimes we get it wrong. And that's all right. You have to do that. You know, the word fail stands for first attempt in learning. And, you know, you fail fast, fail often, fail is it, and just have the courage to apologise and have the courage to forgive yourself and apologise to yourself as well. So while I don't want to say COVID's been a good thing for us, because I think that would be wrong and disrespectful to, you know, everything, what other people have experienced. But I certainly find that through a positive attitude, through an ability to see challenges as challenges and not obstacles in the road, I've fared really well. The business has done well, and we've thrived.
Thinking about all these different factors, and believe me, I've done legislative stuff and done things in government to help pass laws and write law. And just like you were talking about, you got to stand up for what you believe in. Otherwise, folks will run over you with a roller. But if you speak back, even one voice can make a huge difference. A lot of folks don't think so. And I can see that from you, that you voiced yourself, you voiced your heart, you voiced your gut. And I jokingly say the head usually has it wrong most of the time. And, being able to speak back, they get the full picture of what the reality is versus just theory. And I don't think life is based in theory. Life is based on experience of folks. I've actually spent 25 years in mental health and have a degree in nonprofit management and public policy. So as far as from the aspect of government officials and stuff like what you're talking about, if you ever need help with that, it's an American perspective, but some of the perspectives cross all boundaries as far as
absolutely. Yeah. And you know, it's so true. I remember a few years ago, and it was a quote that really stuck with me, and I quote it often. If you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And I just thought, what a powerful quote. And it kept coming back to me during COVID. If you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And over here, we have the government and the local council are all about, small business is the lifeblood of Northern Ireland. We need to be supporting small business and we'll help them get through this. But when it really came to the crunch, they were quite happy to close the doors on me. They were quite happy to withdraw that vital service. When some of the organisations, the charities and the government contracts that we have coming in, people have cited my services as vital to multidisciplinary teams. It has been cited as, Vivian makes a difference between clients being here today and them gone tomorrow. They're hugely powerful statements to make. And I just thought, there was a bit of me that was kind of going, Viv, it's a government department, just suck it up and just do as you're told. But then again, there was that tenacious, that fighter in me, that part of me that was going, no, this is wrong. And while I can kind of sit back and say, well, do you know, if people lose their life because you've stopped this service, then that's on your head and not mine. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And if there's nobody fighting for people who really need it, and there's nobody fighting for small businesses, and there's nobody, then who's doing all this? So, and I just thought, you know, I want to speak up, and I want to have the voice of small business in Northern Ireland heard from a perspective that there had been sweeping generalisations made about my business, about my company, that people never even really knew. Again, as I say, it was an assumption of knowledge. People thought, oh, it's a spa, but they never realised the way I was implementing flotation therapy and the research that was behind what I was doing. They just kind of went, and again, that comes from being in echo chambers, you know, sitting in a room going, a float tank, oh, is that not just like a spa, like a nice thing to do? Yeah, that comes under recreation. Yeah, you're right. And there was nobody challenged that view. And I think, again, in the fairness of equality and equity and diversity and inclusion and all these buzzwords that are going about just now, for me, about being a whole person is about having everybody's voice heard and having every perspective thrown in the mix, so as that nothing gets forgotten and nobody gets left behind.
Yeah. You know, one thing I could hear in your voice, and from what I can see, is you have two things. You either have freedom or you have safety. And you can't have both at the same time.
That's
You know,
it.
everybody's after safety, but mental health has become a crisis in our world. In fact, the World Health Organization actually calls that besides COVID, that is the number one problem going on right now. And here in the States, suicide attempts are up, a whole bunch of folks. I've been 25 years working in mental health at different aspects. So I do understand where you're coming from, not from a degree standpoint, even though I have a minor in psychology. I come from the point of real experience in my own experience, and I am familiar with new lingual programming.
I sit on a board of a charity here in Northern Ireland called PIPS, and it's a public intervention for the prevention of suicide. The rates of suicide here are, and as I say, we still have, as much as we are, you know, over 20 years post-Troubles and we're supposed to be in a period of peace, there's certain pockets and areas within Northern Ireland that have never really seen peace, that still struggle every day. And the thing is, here in Northern Ireland, what's happened is the people who've caused the hurt and the harm are still living in the houses, still walking down the same streets, still part of the same communities that they were when this happened. So you can have little Betty, whose grandson was murdered by the guy over the road, and that guy's still living over the road, and she still has to pass him every day. And there's murals on the wall with people with balaclavas on and guns, reminding you every single day that the community that you live in is all these subtle messages. And you know, it's just, yeah, I really fear for, like, I think the pandemic in Northern Ireland has been mental health for a long time. And I think this has just heightened it. Do you know, I was doing some work recently with therapists and counsellors, and I was providing support for them. And even, you know, one of the counsellors there, she was saying, so this pandemic really has me scared. She had her children coming into the hallway of her house and stripping them down completely naked and taking their clothes off them with gloves on and sending them up to get washed and putting clean clothes on before they came back downstairs again. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what kind of impact is that going to have on your children? And like, we're just going to have a generation of OCD type behaviours, of germaphobes, and it's just going to get worse. And it's a scary thought, Andrea, it really is.
Yeah, I think I firmly believe in reasonableness, because there's car accidents, there's wars, a lot more folks get hurt in those in this pandemic. I'm not saying, you know, we don't have safety, wash our hands, you know, if we need to wear masks. I'm about being reasonable. And I think even throughout the world, I have seen it. You know, some countries go in and out of lockdown like it's a revolving door. I've seen over in the Philippines and over in Korea, you know, different places in the world where I've had folks come in. And what you've described, throughout the world is no different. And
Yeah.
people are feeling those feelings and they're feeling trapped.
Yeah.
And like you're trying to see the brighter side of things. And that's what I try to look at. I don't even have a TV, take newspapers or magazines. I got rid of them all.
You're quite right, Andrea.
I think what you do is one of the biggest factors is give people hope. And your tenaciousness working with the government and saying, hey, this ain't right,
Yeah.
I do something right, and it's just, I think that, you know, I'm about making connections and I'm hoping that you're interested in that too.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I have a massive network, Andrea.
I've tried to simplify things because I deal with 6 different disabilities. So my hours are limited, but I'm trying to increase that. But no matter what, you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
There's no other way.
I see so many people just wanting to stand still and sink into the quicksand and give up. We can't let people give up.
No, no. And the thing is, you never know how close you are to success when you give up. You just never know how close you are.
If you can give 3 takeaways to our audience, what would they be, from what you've talked about, that you think would be a big help for our audience?
I suppose 3 takeaways would be, that quote, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. Be kind to yourself. The one person who is with you from, they say, and this, for me, this is the meaning of spirituality. And people think spirituality can be religion, or it's something that's woo-woo, or it's not. Spirituality is the breath. It's the connection to the self. And if we expire by taking our last breath, then surely our first breath is our first chance to be inspired. Every breath after that is a chance to be inspired. You just need to find the things within your environment that back that up, because it's easy to find the things you don't want. But it's a wee bit more difficult to find the things you do want and to be focused on that. So I think a bit of advice that I would give is, find out more about you, because you're the best friend you're ever going to have. And in that, there is a fantastic quote. It's a poem actually by Dr. Seuss. And that poem says, "You are youer than you. This is truer than true. There is no one alive more youer than you." And I think we forget that sometimes. We forget there's only one of us. And stop trying to fit in. You belong exactly where you are. You belong to you, nobody else.
We all have to be our own oddball.
Exactly. I'm actually looking, I have a makeup bag on my dressing table over there, and it says weirdo on the front of it. And I just had to buy it. When I bought it, I was like, weirdo, that is me. I'm just my own wee weirdo. I just live in my own world of weird. And I love it. People know me here. It's great.
It's the oddballs of the world that change it. There's one side I made that's imperfect. It's added popsicle stick on it. It says, "I am good enough," and enough is misspelt, but I've never changed it because I like the part about imperfection, that nothing is perfect. Even my people, my company culture is about love, kindness, and compassion with my people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's, patience is something that we're taught now not to have, because I remember years ago looking for Christmas presents at Christmas time, and I would go into Edinburgh and I wouldn't be able to find what I was looking for. So I would go to a local town called Dalkeith and I wouldn't find what I was looking for. And I would go to Pennycook and I wouldn't find what I was looking for. And I'd maybe get a train to Glasgow and eventually I would find what I was looking for. And it would take me months and I would have this present in my head. Now, what do? We go onto Google and we're like, this is what I want and this is the colour I want it in. Boom, it's at your door within 24, 48 hours. We've lost the sense of having patience. We've lost the sense of seeking and finding, because everything's just almost as a given now. I think there's a huge benefit to be found in just taking time to be. The clues in our title, we're human beings, but we spend our time doing this and doing that and doing the next thing. When we just stop and kind of go, right, just take that time, have patience with me. I'm not going to get it right every single time. I'm not going to get it right. I might never get it right at all, but you know what? I'm going to have fun trying.
Thank you for coming to Claire's Delight for Life. It's about life. I hope you enjoyed our podcast as much as I did. and I hope you have a great day. I also want to let you know that we are on the platforms of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and Pinterest. And I would gladly check you out and check these out, learn about what we're doing and great things that you can learn. And also check out our website, Declares Delight for Life. It's Declares Delight for Life, DECLUTTERS Delight, DELIGHT for FOLIFE.com. I know that was a little bit long to spell out, but what I would also love for you to check out and share this information with others and share them about the podcast, because it has great value, because you can learn about the experience and strength of others. And that experience and strength of others can go within you. And I would also love you to check out our books, Clutter to Declutter, 28 Days to Declutter Your Mind, Declutter Your Mind for Now. And if you think about it, in the next 2 months, we're going to have another book out, The Secrets to Overcoming Depression, Anxiety, and Stress. And I know for a lot of you out there, these are things that you can address. And we have these, and they were done from the heart, from me to you. And over the next couple months, you will see things out also in audio and video with these books. And check it out. I hope these would be of great value, because that's what we want to give you, great value and love, kindness, compassion, and hope and love and truth. Thank you. And I appreciate everything and who you are. And thank you.